Hello and welcome dear learners to the NPTEL course on Nutritional Epidemiology, a way towards a healthy life. In the Model 2, the study designs and epidemiological methods for the chapter 23, we will be studying the effect modification, interaction and mediation in diet studies. So what is an effect modification, interaction in diet studies, mediation in diet studies will be studied over here. Additionally, nutrition specific challenges and application followed by case study discussion will be taken ahead. So we will see what is effect modification. So effect modification occurs when magnitude of the effect of a primary exposure on an outcome differs across level of a third variable. You can say it is an effect modifier. It tells us for whom a diet is more effective or harmful. So you can understand the impact of this. Unlike confounding, where you can say it is a very biological or physiological reality that sounds to be described, not eliminated. Here you can understand with the example. So here it is being shown that a high dietary sodium exposure, okay, and a salt sensitive effect as a modifier present over here, and then comes the non-salt sensitive effect modifier absent. So what is the strong effect? Hypertension as an outcome, where you can see elevated. So you may come up with the blood pressure, which can be seen as a stronger effect which has been stated. So weaker or no effect, you may find a normal blood pressure or a smaller rise, rather being seen as essential hypertension. What are the key features to understand the effect modification? Focuses on exposure outcome pair, or the modifier may be biological, that is sex, genotypes, or behavioral, that is physical activity, or socioeconomic status. Also, it is a real phenomena and not biased. It also provides insight for targeted intervention and precision nutrition. So you can understand the effect modification to be stated over here. Then comes effect modification, analysis and interpretation. So you can see identifying effect modification, practical considerations and interpretation. So you have to do a data level checks, okay, and a statistical test actually to understand the effect modification to be get identified. In the practical consideration, you have to distinguish it from the confounding. So confounding may have diet, outcome and confounder, which distorts the association to get adjusted. Wherever says the effect modification, you may find a modifier, a diet, outcome and modifier effect, which will genuinely differ as per the report stratum. So you may also find a power where avoiding oversplitting data to reduce the samples per stratum. So you may see a confounding versus the effect modification coming as distinguishing. In interpretation, you may see if present reported subgroup effects, you may see an effect estimate, avoiding an overgeneralizing a single where is an average effect, and you may have an public health implications, identifying subgroups benefiting most or tailored recommendation. Example, more aggressive fiber advice for normal weight versus obese adults. Cautions: avoid data degrading, pre-specify modifiers based on biology, and interpret null interaction test cautiously. Small strata lack power. Interaction in diet studies. So interaction occurs when the joint effect of two exposure differ from sum or product of their individual effect. The equation may be statistical concept is equal to interaction followed by epidemiological biological reality is equal to effect modification. So you may see an example of high saturated fat intake or low physical activity. The outcome is coronary heart disease. So the combined is unhealthy lifestyle can greatly increase the risk beyond what is expected from the each of the factor alone. So it is very clearly an advent as a single factor, but when you take it as a combine, you may have a much more increasing risk to be seen. The type of scales of interaction can be seen as additive scale and a multiplicative scale. In additive scale, you can compare the joint effect with the sum of the individual effects. You may find the focus is risk differences as coming absolute. So most relevant for public health, which shows the extra number of cases caused or prevented, where the risk is due to interaction. In the multiplicative scale, you may find it's the risk of ratios, odds ratios. So comparing the joint effect with the product of the individual effect, you may come across this which is used in most statistical model, logistic regression, Cox model, and all those, which will be clearly stated to see that this type of scales of interaction gives you more clarity in interaction. Now we will understand the synergy versus antagonism. Understanding the interaction. Interaction in nutrition is where you can say why dietary pattern analysis, why nutrition constantly interact with each another in digestive tract or at cellular level. So you can say example of vitamin C enhances the iron absorption and calcium blocks it. So we eat complex food and meals, not isolated nutrients. If you eat isolated nutrients, it is very different. If you eat a complex food, it is very different. So what is the synergy coming as? Synergy may be seen over here as an amplified effect. Risk is larger than expected. So joint effect of two exposure effect strict additivity. 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. So you may get smoking, asbestos, and massive lung cancer risk. High sugar diet, low physical activity, diabetes rise spike. So you can understand what is an expected additive and what is an actual when it is combined as an effect of 2 or 3. Okay. If you have an antagonism to be understood over here, which is being seen as a blunted effect, risk is smaller than the expected. So you may say a joint effect is smaller. There is no association which can be seen with the joint, which is in the first case of synergy it is being seen. Often protective diet blunt harm from other, that is 1 plus 1 is equal to 0.5. How? High fat red meat plus high fish oil intake, okay, which can be seen plus lower cardiovascular risk, where fish oil has a protective diet or can be seen as a protective diet to risk the cardiovascular condition. So you may find that high fat red meat or fish oil combined risk is lesser. So the blunted effect is risk is smaller than the expected. Okay. Now mediation in diet studies. What is mediation? Mediation is a causal pathway where the effect of a dietary exposure on an outcome operates partly or fully through an intermediate variable. So intermediate variable can be seen as a mediator over here. So you may say from this example that there is an exposure of high carbohydrates, beverages, candies, chocolates, which are high in sugar intake. And there is a mediator as an obesity, and the outcome is type 2 diabetes. So you can say sugar increases obesity as an hypothetical statement, and obesity increases diabetes as an evidential statement. Okay. What is the direct versus indirect effect? We will see, understand over here. So mediation analysis divides the total effect of an exposure into two parts. Let me clear to you. Indirect effect, the portion of the diet effect on the outcome that operates through the mediator. So you may say exposure of the sugar is directly being seen as an outcome to diabetes, But if the mediator is obesity, it will combine. So you will have indirect effect. But if you have a direct effect to be seen, the proportion of the diet effect on the outcome that operates independently of the mediator or through the unmeasured pathways. Exposure of the sugar, where you can say it is directly with the outcome, but if you are not coming as a mediator, as an obesity, it is a direct effect to be seen. Okay. So what is the total effect also, that also we will try to understand. Total effect is something, the overall effect of the dietary exposure on the outcome. So total effect is sugar directly linked with diabetes, all the pathways, is equal to direct effect plus indirect effect. So what is the total effect? Direct effect, what we have seen, and indirect effect, not through obesity. Indirect effect, it is not through obesity. Obesity is not being seen over here. Where in indirect effect, the obesity is being seen as a mediator. So if you combine both, it will come as a total effect. So if you combine both, actually it will come as a total effect, direct plus indirect. Okay. So this is very clear now, that what is direct effect and what is indirect effect, and how do we need to take the total effect over here. Okay. So this is very evident that there is mediation in diet studies, and to be clearly understand that how it is being seen as a causal pathway and how dietary exposure on an outcome is operated over here. Now, mediation in diet studies. Is there an importance of mediation in diet study, and what are the methods for mediation? So you can see a mechanistic insights. In the mechanistic insights, it helps distinguish how a diet works. Example, a BMI, inflammation, lipids, insulin resistance, where a diet, a mediator is a BMI or inflammation, and the outcome is a cardiovascular disease. Okay, and policy and intervention. If effect is largely mediated through BMI, focuses on weight management, diet, you may see the BMI and the diet risk. So focus is on weight management. If you do a weight management, the disease risk will be lesser. In the first case, if you find the BMI and inflammation are coming as a mediator, the outcome will also be derived to be coming as mechanistic way. Now we will understand diet, inflammation and disease risk association. The focus here is on anti-inflammatory diet. If you are targeting a diet that is anti-inflammatory, you may say the disease risk is low over here. Very important. For the policy and intervention, we should try to take mediation as very important measure. Then you can understand the study design and measurement. It highlights the need to measure relevant intermediate variables. Biomarkers can be one, lifestyle can be one, and BMI. And these are all used in cohort studies. In cohort study, while you design the major mediators, you can measure BMI, you can measure biomarkers, you can measure lifestyle factors, you can measure. And these are better understanding the pathways. Okay. Now I will put you the methods for mediation. The Baron and Kenny approach, structural equation modeling, and causal inference framework. This is very evident over here that Baron and Kenny approach is a very traditional stepwise regression method to determine whether the controlling for the mediator attenuates the relationship between exposure and the outcome. It is very evident and clear in this equation over here. The structural equation modeling, a more robust statistical technique that can handle a multiple pathways, exposure and mediators simultaneously, which is also very clear and evident like the first one. The causal inference framework. This is a modern epidemiological framework which is being used. This is to calculate natural diet and indirect effects, accounting for exposure mediator interactions and confounding. So total effect is equal to NDE plus NIE, natural diet effect plus natural indirect effect. Okay. Let me give you an example actually before I come up actually for a detailed discussion for this. So there is an example of high sugar intake, obesity and type 2 diabetes as an association, which we all are clearly now in a very phase to understand, where a high sugar intake is being seen as in first line, adiposity, where you can get it from the BMI, the body mass index, inflammation, insulin resistance, where you can see an addition to it, and beta cells dysfunction, giving you a sense that you may be diabetic and you may have your sugar rising actually by 180, where type 2 diabetes. So what is the total effect over here? The total effect is sugar intake leading to diabetes. What is the indirect effect? Through mediators like BMI, which can be seen as measurement, and direct effect through the other pathways that can be genetic, gut microbiome, where it is directly reflecting that you will be prone to diabetes. So the total effect will be seen as in plus for indirect effect and direct effect. Indirect effect and direct effect, which will give you total effect. Okay. So this is a clear explanation which is coming to state that how the total effect is being calculated. And you may have to understand from this example that the clarity comes to you of mediation, which plays a major role in nutritional epidemiology, where you can come up to see a mediator which can be seen in some cases as focusing, as weight management, or also coming as BMI or inflammation or anti-inflammatory diet, which can help you in designing the public health interventions. Now there are some challenges and applications to this. What are the challenges? Measurement error in diet. So the very first error is 24 hours recalls. So you can have biomarkers or all have errors by bias mediation, and interaction estimates, especially when effect sizes are small. So measurement error in diet is being seen as a very first challenge. Second is multicollinearity and correlated components like diet are multivariate. Isolated the effect of one nutrient or a food group is difficult. Models may struggle to separate direct and mediated effects. The third challenge may be time ordering and temporality. Diet, mediator as a BMI and inflammation and outcome. So cross-sectional data cannot establish temporality and do not support causal mediation, which is very evident actually to be taken as a challenge. Also, there is a very contextual and cultural factor which is being seen as a challenge with respect to socioeconomic status, region, ethnicity and so on. Now, we'll understand how the applications in nutrition research. You may have three tracks of application. The first is precision nutrition. So what it is? It uses effect modification to identify subgroups. You may see a normal diet or a high fiber diet, which is advised for obese patient, and a normal diet for a general person actually to come up with a high fiber diet. So you may have two variations to be seen of precision nutrition. The better outcomes in the right in the subgroups to be identified over here. What are pathway driven analysis? Mediation analysis linking with the dietary patterns. The dietary patterns might be coming with lipids, inflammation, CVD, diabetes, providing mechanistic paucity, or you may come across with a total diet effect which can be seen direct and indirect link in combination. So you may understand this very clearly for these two of the disease condition. Okay. Public health interventions. What are public health interventions to be taken as an application from this? Interaction and mediation can guide multiple components intervention and help prioritize where components matter most. So public health interventions may come as advisory for healthy diet, more on physical activity, improve immediate factors where you can see BMI as an immediate factor, lipid, inflammatory diet conditions which are increasing. So you may have an outcome to be seen as a better health. Control your sugar, regularize your CVD risk, and the population will get more benefit as being seen as a plus. Okay. So this is very evident that it is also benefiting in nutrition research. Now we will have a case discussion. There are three ways to understand this, and the case is on red meat, colorectal cancer, effect modification, interaction and mediation. So how to make it more simpler to give you the scenario for this? It is a cohort study which investigates the association between heavy red meat consumption and the risk of colorectal cancer. So this is a statement which is having variables. One is a variable that heavy red meat consumption, and the outcome variable is colorectal cancer. Mediation is the exposure. Mediation is the BMI or inflammatory risk or lower or higher activity. Okay, now we will understand it is more in the detail. Exploring effect modification. So researchers hypothesize, as we have hypothesized, that family history of cancer is an effect modifier. They stratify the data. Someone will say there is a direct effect from genetics and all that, or indirect effect with the smoking, adding it and all those. So high red meat intake as an exposure, there is a link actually with colorectal cancer. So no family history of cancer, okay, low risk. Family history of cancer, high risk. 15% high risk of colorectal cancer. Family history of cancer, you have 60% of high risk. So you may have a high risk for this. So what is the conclusion? Family history modifies the effect of red meat on colorectal cancer. The family history is very important over here. Okay, that is called as exploring effect modification. Now what is exploring interaction? So now there is a interaction which is being coming, and we will try to understand it. Researchers examine dietary calcium which binds to toxic bile acids in the gut. They test the interaction between the high red meat and high dairy calcium. It binds the toxic bile acids in the gut. So they find an antagonist interaction. The high calcium intake blunts the negative impact of the red meat. So the conclusion is that antagonist interaction, calcium blunts harm from red meat. So you may find that there is a high red meat alone as an increased risk in proportion large, where versus high calcium alone has been seen to reduce it. Okay. So now we will go on for understanding exploring the mediation. So researchers want to know how red meat causes colorectal cancer. So they measured the gut microbe production of the TMAO, a very pro-inflammatory metabolite, red meat consumption, gut microbe, TMAO production, inflammation and colorectal cancer. So what are the pathways? Indirect path and direct path. What is the conclusion? TMAO production is mediator on the causal pathway. So inflammation is one reason actually to see that there is an increase, and if it is fueled actually either with genetics, either with the other mediators, then you may find that there is an effect modification that can be brought over here. And exploration interaction can also be seen actually to see the factors which are influencing by this case study discussion. So with this we come an end to this chapter. Effect modification. The diet outcome association varies across level of a third variable identified by stratification and interaction test, crucial for stratified and targeted recommendations. And interaction, which is the joint effect of two exposures, differs from sum or product of their separate effect. It distinguishes additive versus multiplicative scales, important for combination exposure analysis in nutrition. So you may have a differentiation which is to be understood over here for modification and interaction. Mediation, the part of the diet outcome effect run through an intermediate variable. The intermediate variable may be BMI, might be inflammation. This requires a very careful assumptions and longitudinal design. This is also useful for mechanistic insights and intervention targeting, which can be seen from individual to a group of a population. In diet studies, especially nutritional epidemiology, we take measurement error, confounding and multicollinearity in use, which makes this all analysis challenging, but also highly informative when interpreted very cautiously, which is a need when we understand this chapter. We need to go in thorough, and when we are interpreting it, we need to understand all these factors in detail. So thank you, and you can use these references for going in more detail for this chapter. Thank you very much.